Okay, well, we're going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our first in the series for the spring semester, actually. So thank you for being here. Welcome again. My name is Tiffany O'Neill, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations and University Engagement at Sonoma State University. We're excited to be kicking off this semester's Industry Insights, which is a webinar series where Sonoma State alumni share their insights and knowledge with SSU students and alumni who are looking to launch their own careers and or make a pivot into a new industry. We're excited for today's session with Libby Pickian, who is a Senior Program Planner with Napa Valley Transit Authority. Industry Insights is a collaboration between the Career Center and the Alumni Association. Today's presentation is being recorded. As a reminder, it will be available on demand on the Alumni YouTube channel, where it can be rewatched and shared with others after the event. We'll send the link out to all the participants after it has been uploaded to our channel, probably later this week. During the session, the webinar, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A feature on Zoom. Our team will be monitoring them throughout the conversation. And at this time, I'm excited to turn the program over to our moderator for the conversation today, Rich Shaywitz, who will introduce today's speaker. Rich is a double alumnus of Sonoma State and is currently the board president for the Sonoma State University Alumni Association. Thank you, Rich and Libby, both of you, for being here. And Rich, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany. And welcome, everybody. So let's go and get started. As Tiffany had mentioned, we're honored to have Libby Payan today. And Libby was an active and involved Seawolf during her time on campus when she graduated in 2014 with 2 degrees, one in economics and one in environmental studies and planning, with the career goal of giving back by working in the public government. She immediately fulfilled her goal when she was hired by the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit District, where she worked in a variety of roles over 6.5 years, including assisting in the implementation of the SMART Train public transit system. Following her work at SMART, she was hired by the Napa Valley Transit Authority, her current employer, as a senior program planner, helping to oversee the Vine Transit public system in the beautiful Napa Valley. So, Libby, we're all jealous because of where you get to live every day. So we can talk about that later. But thanks for joining us, Libby, and we'll kick off with an easy question about your journey. So, can you share a bit about your journey from Sonoma State to your current role as senior program planner at the Napa Valley Transit Authority?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rich. And for the record, Sonoma County, I would say, is just as cool as Napa. So just putting that out there. I know there's like this low-key friendly rivalry between Sonoma County and Napa County. They're both beautiful, wonderful places. And I do actually miss living in Sonoma County. Put that
That's
on the
right.
record. So I guess I'll start off a little bit about my journey to SSU, and then I'll start then from there how I ended up at, I'll just call it NVTA to save ourselves some breath here. And in government, we love our acronyms. So NVTA, Napa Valley Transportation Authority. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in the South Bay of LA. If any of you listening are familiar with that area, it's an area that feels like very much it's a bubble within Los Angeles. So when you tell people, "Oh, I grew up in LA," they start thinking of like downtown Pasadena, Eagle Rock, and maybe even Disneyland, even though that's technically Orange County. Like they think of these big areas, and Southern Cal and the South Bay area of Los Angeles is kind of a bubble. So I from kind of early on in high school, I'd say by my freshman year, when I started thinking ahead to colleges, I was already thinking about kind of want to get out of this South Bay bubble. I kind of want to get out of LA. I kind of want to experience something totally different. And it was on a family road trip the summer before my sophomore year. We were actually, I think on that road trip, we went to the Pacific Northwest. Anyways, a lot of our vacations growing up were road trips. And we were actually stopping by and touring different colleges along the way because my brother was going into his senior year. So he was starting to think about colleges and whatnot. But then I also got a benefit because I got to look at campuses. And Sonoma State was kind of on the drive down as we were heading back to Southern California. And funny thing, this was kind of during a time where GPS wasn't super relevant. They were sometimes you had the devices in the cars, but we didn't all have our phones where we could easily navigate. So my dad naively I was like, Sonoma State. And he just drove to the town of Sonoma and thought we're going to see a big campus if we just drive around Sonoma. So we were driving around the plaza, like, where is it? And my dad, like, got in the car and just talked to a random person because he's the kind of person that never had any problem. Like, I'm going to go ask for directions. And he's like, do you know where the university is? The person's like, oh, it's like 20 minutes. Like you're a little off here. It's not you would think Sonoma State. So we once we got the directions, you know, we landed on campus and I've got to say I'm personally a very visual person and there was something about when I was on the Sonoma State campus that I was able to visualize myself there and I didn't have that same kind of visualization epiphany when we went and looked at other campuses. I think what really drew me is number one, how beautiful it is. As I mentioned, I grew up in Los Angeles. It's very urban out there. I will say though, in the South Bay, you have the beautiful beaches and whatnot, but this is a whole different kind of beauty. And I was just struck just walking around on campus, like, wow, like I'm gonna walk to campus and like pass a butterfly garden. What? That is so cool. Um, and then what also really attracted me were the smaller campus size. You know, I had concerns that if I went to some big university, like I was really looking at University of Arizona at one point, that I'd just get lost in the shuffle. That I'm one of, 50,000 plus however many students go there. And the student to teacher ratio is much higher there. And I liked that I'd get a lot more individualized attention at Sonoma State. And then number three, the housing. And I know a lot of people listening to this right now can say housing was probably a big draw for them as well. Loved the housing here compared to all the other traditional dorm styles, and I felt it'd be more suitable for my needs. So for me, I had Sonoma State on my radar. And again, I was just a sophomore at that time. And one of the reasons why we even stopped at Sonoma State was kind of there was a word of mouth reputation it had, at least in some of the schools I went to growing up. Um, one of my teachers at my elementary school, her daughter had gone there, was just raving about it. And just from word of mouth, oh, Sonoma State. Oh, you got to check out Sonoma State. Oh, Sonoma State. So that's why we ended up checking it out. And I'm so glad we did. Another reason why I actually wanted to go there was that at the time, I thought I wanted to be a nurse, and I knew that they had a very great nursing program. So Sonoma State was checking a lot of boxes for me. So by the time my senior year rolled around and I'm applying for campuses, Sonoma State was actually one of the first ones to tell me I got in. And then it's like every other letter, rejection, or acceptance I got after that didn't matter because I'm like, you know what? I got into the one that's just right for me. So that's how I ended up at Sonoma State. After I graduated, within just I think it was about 2 weeks after graduation, I started an internship with the SMART train. Again, I'm going to use those lovely acronyms, Sonoma Urban Area Rail Transit. If any of you are in the Sonoma County area, you're probably very familiar with SMART, the green train that rolls up and down the tracks. I'm very lucky that I got that internship so close to graduation. The timing worked out very well. And within Smart, I took on a variety of different roles. It started as an intern, then I was an office assistant, then I was a community outreach planner, then I got to move over into assistant planner, more transit planning kind of stuff, which was what I really wanted to do, transit planning. So I was happy to move into that role. After 6.5 years there, I had moved to Napa in 2018, and I had a long commute from Napa to Petaluma, and I knew that starting eyeball Napa Valley Transportation Authority and VTA because I knew they were closer to me. That was the community I lived in, and I wanted to be able to serve those in my direct community. So in 2020, I applied for a job at VTA, one that admittedly I was not qualified enough for. It was for the transit manager position, but it's one of those things that I felt like it never hurts to try, to just throw your hat in the ring, just see what happens. And while I didn't get that position, they did call me and say, we really liked you, just that you're not quite qualified for this position. We're going to call you if something opens up. And lo and behold, I think it was probably about 7 months later, I got a call saying a position opened up. Are you interested? And I said, absolutely. And that's kind of how I ended up at NBTA. So one of the life lessons I'd pass on to anyone here is that even if you're looking at a position and you think, well, I'm not qualified for that, I'm not going to bother, still try because you don't know where it could lead you.
I love that, Libby. I mean, that's exactly. Let's put the ball in their court. Let them tell us that we're not qualified for something, right? What's the worst they can tell you? No. And by you doing that, you had a chance to build a network and look where you are now. So that's really inspiring. That's probably in this short time we've been on so far, that's a gem, a gold nugget of advice right there. So thank you. Uh, you mentioned how I think you highlighted some of the great parts of Sonoma State of why all of us who are alum that probably helped choose Sonoma State. But can you talk about some of your experiences while you were here and maybe some skills you gained while you're here that maybe you're using now in your career or kind of has propelled you to be better in your career?
Sure. So, again, what I loved about Sonoma State was the smaller campus size, and with that came a lot of leadership opportunities that I know at larger institutes, not saying they don't have them, but that it's easier to get into leadership positions here at Sonoma State. So after my freshman year, I had I had applied for some leadership positions. I had applied for summer orientation, summer bridge, peer mentor, and I actually got rejected from all of them. And it's hard when when you get rejected from things, it's hard not to like feel discouraged a little bit, but if anything, I took it as an opportunity. And, I told myself, I've only been here a year. You know what? I'm going to reapply for those positions 1 year from now, and I'm going to show them how I've improved since a year ago when I applied. So then I just started trying to get involved as much as I could, whether that was leadership opportunities through Join Us Making Progress Jump, through helping with different clubs, signing up for clubs, doing different activities with those clubs, volunteering where I could. I signed up to join the Vagina Monologues. I don't know if they still do them on campus, but that for me was really starting to break me out of my shell because I was and I still am naturally an introverted person, but I wanted to start breaking my shell a little bit because I knew this was a unique opportunity and time in my life where I was surrounded by a lot of safety nets and support. So I wanted to seize opportunities while I had them. And sure enough, applied for summer orientation a year later, and I did get the position. Applied for peer mentor and I got that. Summer orientation, man, that really when I talk about I was in a shell, summer orientation is what really broke me completely out of this shell. I was so nervous before my first group. They're all looking up to you. They have no idea what's going on, and you're expected to get them excited about Sonoma State, show them how to get their classes, just show them around, give them you know, the scoop on what's going on campus. And it really, really broke me out of my shell because I wanted to be that like really approachable kind of leader, wanted to come off as fun. And I don't mean to sound like you have to be this super extroverted rah-rah person to be an orientation leader. We had all kinds of different types of leadership represented within our orientation leaders, but that was me wanting to try something different. And it broke me out. And I mean, to this day, I've found that a lot of my growth has come when I've stepped out of my comfort zone. And I'm not sure I would have done that if I was at any other university. So the opportunities provided by Sonoma State are really like skills that are applicable to anything I do. So, like for instance, when I would work for the Smart Train, I I was the primary person that went to all the schools in Sonoma and Marin counties to give rail safety presentations because Smart started and implemented its service in I think it was August 2017. Prior to that, there had been no passenger service in either county in, 50 plus years. There were generations of people who had never seen a train rolling through town. So we had a very extensive outreach program where I had to go into every school, give presentations. And I'm up there with a microphone in front of hundreds of kids. If you told my introverted, shy self I'd be doing something like that, I never would have believed you. No way. But I knew because I had learned it's okay to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. Dare to fail every now and then. And sometimes you will, but other times you're really going to grow from it. And I know that Sonoma State giving me those opportunities really helped me. And my super senior year, because I was a 5 year student, I joined government. And that was probably, oh man, one of the most applicable like skills and things I learned from things as basic as just understanding the structure of a board meeting, how to read the agenda, what the minutes are, what it means when we're like looking for emotions. You can just like just that very basic thing. I then knew like when I started working at Smart how their board meeting was going to work because I was familiar with how the government was run at school. So I mean, tons of skills gained here that I'm not just in my career, but in my everyday life too, that I'm eternally grateful for.
Those are great examples, and now it makes sense why you're so good at running our board meetings. Um, I guess the cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Growth comes out of just times of discomfort, and I mean, it's amazing that you're able to do that and be brave enough to do that, and always another gold nugget of information for anyone who's listening, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? So. All right, well, let's get to in your industry, specifically for what you do day to day as a senior program planner. What is your day to day like?
I get this question all the time. I'll be like, hey, I'm a transit planner. And people will be like, okay. So, like, I know what transit is. I know buses and trains, but like, what do you do? So, I mean, I'll say that no day is the same here. There are certain things that routinely happen, but there's a lot of every day feels different kind of vibe with this kind of job. I mean, it could be a multitude of things, whether it's responding to customers directly. Our writers have methods and tools to get in contact with us. So whether they want to say, get in contact with us to say, hey, I have a suggestion about how I think you should change your schedule, or hey, I was waiting at this bus stop and it passed me, and I missed my doctor's appointment, and then I subsequently respond, look into it. I'm so sorry. Here's a free 20 ride pass. There's a lot of grant writing, so here's a little nugget for you all. I mean, the more practice you can have writing, and not just to get into government, but in any industry, it's going to be really helpful, especially if the industry is tied to grants in any way, shape, or form, whether you're writing them, whether you're reporting on grants. Being able to write is a really important skill. So if you're able to and you have free time, I'd highly recommend. I didn't do this, but it's something I wish I could if I could go back, is writing for the Star. I know it's a great way to get writing experience. That's something I would do differently if I could go back. I give a lot of presentations, whether it be to our board of directors or our citizens advisory committee, our paratransit coordinating council, and a lot of pre-work goes into giving those presentations, and you have to write these memos. So again, there's that writing. And I feel like at your schooling over the years, you're taught like, I need to write a 7-page paper structured in this very way. And what you learn really quickly in government is that, and I remember when I first started working at Smart, the number one criticism I was getting from my supervisors is like, there's too much fluff in here. You need to learn how to write concisely, which is why I say like doing something like writing for the Star would be great, because you don't have room for a lot of fluff. You're just getting down to like, if you're writing a memo, you don't need this whole 20 sentence backstory on it. Like, no, just get to the point. So being concise with your writing, definitely a great skill. And again, anywhere, whether you're in government or another agency, very important. Um, Obviously with public transit comes schedules. So we change schedules. Typically at my agency, we change them 3 times a year. Other agencies may be more or less than that. But it's about a 12 to 14 week lead time for us to change a schedule. And there is a lot of work that goes into that. So at any given time, if we're about to be changing a schedule, I may be juggling like 4 or 5 different things related to that. Um, there's a lot of reporting we have to do. Any government agency that receives any kind of funding, whether it be from a regional level, state level, or federal level, you're probably doing a lot of reporting about that funding you're receiving. So, for instance, every October, I'm always very busy because we owe to the Federal Transit Administration this big annual report. They call it the National Transit Database that every public transit agency has to submit. And it's very extensive, and it takes me weeks to just pull up a lot of data and input it into the system correctly. So reporting, it makes up a lot of my time. And we're also a planning agency here. So a lot of times we're writing big plans that are like, 20 to 100 pages, plans that take a lot of time and research to put together. And I'm dealing with a lot of data on a day-to-day basis, whether it's ridership data, revenue data, passenger data, okay, I get data requests at least once a week for like one of my supervisors was asking me for a percentage of our trips that we miss in a given month. So I had to pull the data on that. So that's just I can't even say quick snapshot, but those are just some of the things I do. And the thing about working in government, and I'm sure it varies at different agencies, but I work at a small agency. There's only 17 of us, which by the way, 3 of us are alums. So that means about 18% of our staff are SSU alums. Shout out Seawolves. Um, when you work at a smaller agency, you get to wear a lot of different hats. So there's always the joke about like in your job description, there's that bullet that says performs duties as assigned. So like you'll get something, we'll be like, oh, I guess this falls under other duties as assigned. So you get to dip your toes in a lot of things, which is a nice thing about it. So you can pretty quickly learn what you do and don't like working it's particularly if it's a smaller government agency. I've never worked at a bigger one. Smart was pretty small too. When I started working there, there was only about 30 employees. But I don't know if it's different at a big one, but if you're looking to work in government and it's like a smaller water agency, Parks and Rec kind of thing, you're going to be doing a lot more than what just your job description says.
Well, you hit on some really great things that are that rewards for your job and what you're able to to get working in public transit. What about some challenges that you go through in your daily?
There's plenty of those, I will say. Um, as a government agency, you're working for the public, right? So like anything you do is rightfully open to scrutiny. I mean, we are using taxpayer dollars. We have a fiduciary responsibility to be using those taxpayer dollars efficiently. And a lot of times people have opinions about how you should be doing things. A lot of times without understanding context and regulations and things you can and can't do. But you have to be open to criticism because you're going to get it working in government, straight up. Um, and it can be a challenge. I think back to some of my hardest days at working at the Smart Train were when I was in community outreach. We used to attend a lot of events throughout Sonoma and Byrd counties, particularly before the train opened, just to raise awareness. Hey, this train's coming, we're in construction, there's testing, there's this and that. And there was a lot of public backlash on why are we spending our taxpayer dollars this way? This is a waste. Once got smart train, they should call you the dumb train. Haha. You used to always get that comment when we were at events or smart someday may actually run trains. Haha. And I laughed at that one. That was really funny at the time. And I still remember it all these years later. But you have to be open to those kinds of things and realize like people all have their valid viewpoints and there's a reason why they think these things. But at the end of the day, if you're working for a government agency, you have to remember you all have a shared vision and you're all there for the same reason. And everyone that worked at Smart worked tirelessly and believed in it. And we all recognize that, yes, it's a huge cost up front to implement these kinds of things, but this is one of those things that we see as a long-term investment, that it was something that would really pay off, generations from now as families get used to a train being an option. It changes your transportation habits. And sure enough, on Smart, they're seeing a lot of younger ridership, a lot of students taking it to school. And then as they grow up, then they teach their kids, hey, I took the train to school. This is how you do it. So, anyways, I guess long story short, to say, rightfully so, you're going to be criticized and just understand everyone has their viewpoints and there's reasons for them. But that's got to be one of the biggest challenges working in government. And another challenge is that you get very complex work. So I've made lots of mistakes. I've failed along the way and I've had to own up to it and learn from those mistakes and hopefully not do them again. So you're you're probably going to mess up here and there in government, but being willing to learn the lessons from that and move on, definitely a big challenge.
Well, it sounds like you had a great experience working in the implementation of the smart train. I know I've ridden it a bunch of times, and actually it was entertaining for my kids when they were young, just to get them out to doing something. So we'd hop on the train and ride down and ride back, and just to get them out of the house. So, but it sounds like you had some great takeaways from that experience, and it's led you to where you are right now. Um, so getting to for students and others who are early in their career, you've thrown out some really great gold nuggets so far. But what are some key things and key ways to stand out when applying to a role in public planning and transportation? Can you mention some of those? I know you mentioned you talked about being able to write, which is an important part. I think in any industry nowadays, unless we can just chat GPT everything. Um, but how about some other things, Libby?
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that helped me stand out on my resume was I had a lot of volunteer service, and I was willing to demonstrate and show that I already had a propensity to want to give back to the public, and I think that takes you a long way. And many of you probably recall as you went through summer orientation, you heard the phrase "get involved" over and over and over again. To the point I remember when I was, a student attending summer orientation, I remember having the thought at one point, like, are these summer leaders getting paid by how many times they say get involved? Like, I'm sick of it. I get it, get involved. But there's a reason why they're hearkening that. And sure enough, all those experiences I talked about earlier, like doing summer orientation leader, being in student government, being a peer mentor, those were all things I was able to put on my resume and what really helped bolster me. And what also really helped, I'm not sure if the certain departments still require this, but at least environmental studies, which I recognize for any current students is now GEP, but back in my day, it was ENSP. They required an internship. And that was something that I think also really helped bolster my resume right there. Required you to actually go out in the field and do something. So you already have a leg up on someone else, a non-Sonoma State student that's applying and maybe just went to their classrooms and didn't have any outside experience at all. You're already having a leg up on them in that regards.
Great. Well, you talked about in your introduction about you came in and you had intention of being a nursing major. And obviously a transit planner in the public sector is not even close to being a nurse. So for those, maybe new alum that are listening in, or even current alums, or anybody that's listening in that's maybe thinking about a career pivot, tell us about that feeling and how, you went from thinking that you were going to do one thing and then now completely something different.
Yeah, I remember that feeling of when I first started to have doubts and started feeling worried about like what people would think about me because here I am. I'd been telling everyone I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to be a nurse. That's what I'm going to be. You'll see. I'd taken my senior year of high school. They called it biomed, and I got to shadow doctors in hospitals, and like and I ended up in that newspaper that was published for that hospital, like saying, "Oh, look at the future nurses of America." So I felt like I kind of had some pressure coming in, like I have to be a nurse. So I remember that feeling when I started taking the classes, and I'm like, I'm not sure this is for me. I knew that as part of my personality style, I love giving back and helping others. So like I knew that was the heart of it. That's where I was coming from. But I once I started to realize I didn't want to do nursing, I started feeling like, oh my gosh, then what am I going to do? And how am I going to tell my parents? What are they going to think about me? What are all my peers going to think about me? What about that hospital that wrote that news piece about me? What are they going to think about me? But ultimately, if you know in your heart it's not right, you got to do the right thing. And what made me switch specifically to environmental studies and then to economics was I had taken economics in high school and I really liked it a lot. I thought it was very fascinating, but I just like the thought never occurred to me, oh, I could major that. Like I just didn't think about it. And I also had the kind of fear and stigma of like, oh, that's a guy's major. There aren't a lot of women in that major in that field. I'm just not gonna stand out there. So I mean, honestly, that did play a role in like why initially I didn't come in declared as an economics major. But then I took an intro to environmental studies class, and that's when like it really started opening things up for me. And I realized, oh, wow, this is something I'm very interested in. There's a lot of things within this field where I can not only help people, but help the environment that needs a lot of help right now. And then I come to find out they actually had, I don't know if they still have it, but while I was there, they had a special double major track for economics and environmental studies. So the classes I took as an environmental studies major and an economics major looked a little different than like those that were just in environmental studies or just an econ major. By me having it blended, my track looked a little different. But as soon as I learned that was an option, like, oh my gosh, that's for me. I've this is totally for me. And now where public transit in particular comes in. So as part of environmental studies and planning, again, don't know if they do this now, but at the time you had to pick a concentration. Like they had, you could there was like environmental leadership, there was planning, there was natural resources, these different tracks you could do within environmental studies. And I actually picked natural resources. I was thinking I'd be more out and about in the field doing environmental kind of work. And within environmental studies, you had to do like one or two electives from a different track. And I did an intro to planning track as as the elective. And when I took intro to planning, and our professor at the time, Thomas Jacobson, brought in a guest speaker. Her name was Lois Fisher. I still remember her to this day. So if you're out there, Lois, listening to this by any chance, shout out to you. I just had like the epiphany, the light bulb went off in my head moment in that class. Like, this is what I want to do. Oh my gosh, city planning, urban design. This is fascinating. I love this. This is my career. I had already taken a bunch of classes within that natural resources class track though, so I didn't, it was too late to like go back and switch to my concentration to planning. So I actually mostly took natural resources classes and only took a couple planning classes. And here's some irony for you. Again, don't know if they offer this now, but at the time they had transit planning. Did I take that class? No. I thought at the time, like I wanted to be a city planner, help with design review, look at permits, help shape future developments of city. Like I wasn't even thinking transit at all. They also had at the time, maybe they still do now, a CEQA class, a California Environmental Quality Act class. That's something that really would have helped me. Intro to Transit would have really helped me. GIS, Geographic Information Systems, which is like a, to sum it up shortly, it's like a really fancy way that you can make maps. That really would have helped me. Did I take any of those classes? No, no, I did not. I went down a different track. But it turns out that's okay. My passion was there. And what also actually inspired me at the same time I was taking those intro to planning courses. This is so cheesy, but I've only told some people this, but at the time I was watching the show Parks and Rec. I don't know if you've watched it, if you out there are listening right now. Something about watching that show and being in an intro to planning class, like something clicked in my brain. I was like, I want to be the Leslie Knope of Sonoma County. That is my goal. Oh my gosh, I'm going to do it by working in government, particular city planning, maybe even Parks and Rec, just like Leslie. That's my goal. And from there, like that was my vision. Now, I started applying to jobs late my senior year to try to get to be a city planner, work in Parks and Rec. And then this internship comes up with the Sonoma Aerial Transit. And I'm thinking like public transit, like I hadn't even thought about it, but like that gets me in the realm. And that's advice. Here's another gold nugget for all of you out there listening, especially if you want to work in government. Sometimes you may not get the exact role, the exact position you were looking for, but here's a little secret. Government, they like hiring people within government. So if you could just get your foot in the door, even if it's not with like the department you want. So yes, I started community outreach, and while that was awesome, my ultimate goal was to be a planner, but the planning department was full at that time. But at least my foot's in the door. I'm working at the agency. If I can prove myself to be a valuable employee, maybe someday they'll offer me a promotion, and eventually they did. Or here at NBTA, as I mentioned, we're very small. There's only 17 of us. So it can feel like there's not a lot of room to grow because there's only so many positions here. Well, what I've witnessed in my time here is that when they really like an employee, they'll revise position titles or shift things around to suit you. So if you are working your hardest, I found that certain agencies are willing to adapt to that. So there's some more advice there that I guess I've kind of got derailed here from the initial question of how I went from nursing to transit plane, but it's been quite a journey.
That's great, Libby. I mean, shout out to Leslie Knope for the inspiration of getting you away from nursing and helping the public transit system. That's incredible. Well, You talked a lot about in your days at Sonoma State how you came out of your comfort zone, you volunteered and got into as much you got into as much as you could with leadership positions. You talked about jump and all the other things that are on campus. So I know you learned a ton. So through that and through your experience so far, what do you think the most important leadership qualities have you did you take away and are you currently utilizing in your job now?
Ooh, that's such a good question. The most important, it's hard to just pick one because I have like five floating around in my brain right now. One is your willingness to adapt, willingness to, as I mentioned, at smaller government agencies, you end up wearing a lot of different hats. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I know there's things that have been thrown at me that I never thought I'm going to be doing this kind of outreach. I never thought that. Oh, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember working at Smart and we were looking at developing a new website and I was looking into like website coding and stuff. And I'm like, did I ever think I'd be learning about website coding in government? So I'd say a willingness to take on anything that comes your way. Leadership within your organization will take note of that if you take it on willingly and do a good job with it. That's something, adaptability, very important. And then if you yourself are in a leadership role, I'm lucky that I've had a lot of great bosses and leaders within my organization. Um, they look out for me. And like, for instance, my supervisor here at NVTA handed me a book recently that she's like, I think this would really be beneficial for you. And the book was called The Confidence Code. And it's all about how a lot of times women aren't nearly as confident as men. And there's a lot of research behind that, why we don't speak up in meetings and why sometimes we get behind in promotions because we're simply not as assertive as men sometimes and going to the boss saying, I deserve a promotion. So as a leader, recognizing how you can help those around you, I think is absolutely integral to not only your success, but the success of those around you as well. I mean, I gotta say those are some of the top ones that come to mind for me, but my brother is actually, he went to the United States Naval Academy, so he's done a lot of leadership things. And I remember once asking him, what do you think is like the most important quality of a leader? Someone who's a Marine. He's in Okinawa, Japan right now, leading I don't know how many people. And he always said lead by example. And that's something that always stuck with me in my leadership roles at Sonoma State and what I do now. And I'm lucky that I have another transit planner that started here about a year and a half ago. And I'm so thrilled that I get to kind of be in that position where I lead by example and I show him how to do things so that he can in turn learn and then he can pass that on to someone else in the future.
So great. So great. Really awesome. Well, speaking of leadership and growth, we've been fortunate enough to serve on the Alumni Association Board of Directors together. And I wanted to ask you what motivated you to stay connected with Sonoma State. And I know you've said some really nice things about your experience, but you graduated. You're in the private. You're now in your career. And what made you want to be back involved?
I missed it. That was the thing, once I graduated and you get your job. First of all, I had to get used to the concept of you'd come home and like not have homework and not have to study and have these papers you have to write. It was nice, don't get me wrong, but I just found like I'd finish my work day and then it's like, now what? And I really missed because we did student government that last year. You're kind of like in the know on everything going on. So I went from being so heavily involved to just like, boop, bye, good luck, spread your wings, spread your seawolf wings. And all of a sudden, I'm like, now what? I miss that. I miss being involved. I miss learning what's going on. And like, I was so eager and had this yearning to want to help future seawolves as well, the way I had been helped while I was there. As I've mentioned many times, I was very involved, and I wanted to keep giving back. I felt like I was a student that bled Columbia blue, navy blue, and white. I was low key Lobo a few times. I mean, I loved Sonoma State. I loved the Seawolves, and to just suddenly not be directly involved anymore was just kind of like, uh, 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 what? So I attended, they were having at the time a fundraiser at Lagunitas, the board of directors, and I got to talking to some of the board members at the time, and I was kind of just like, hey, I recently graduated. I love Sonoma State. I miss it. Do you have room on your board? And yes, please, come on. Why don't you come to a board meeting? If you like it, we'll onboard you, blah, blah, blah. So they say the rest is history. But yeah, I think I've been on the board almost 10 years now. I think I joined in 2015, just about a year after I graduated. So all it took was attending an alumni event, talking to them to finally be like, yes, I'm back. I've got my foot in the door at Sonoma State again. I'm in the know. I'm involved. I'm able to help not just alums, but future Seawolves as well. Because I know that's a direction our board has taken a little more recently in terms of helping current students and not just focusing on alums. Because we are alums since day one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you are a valued member of our board, as you know, and so you mentioned it in a roundabout way that there is a networking component to life, to us on the board as well. Can you talk about some importance of networking, as you know, it might be in your career or outside of your career? You mentioned that in your interview that you felt you were unqualified for it, you didn't get the job, but you built a network there who ended up getting you another job. So can you talk about just how important that is as we navigate life?
Crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And I realize there's probably introverts out there that hear the word networking and you think of like just the cliche you're in a room with someone and you have to talk to a stranger. Networking can also be just following the alumni association on social media, maybe just emailing someone. So I recognize too that not everyone is comfortable with those face-to-face kind of interactions, but building those connections are so important to building success within your career, particularly within the transit world. What I will say is that a lot of us know each other throughout the Bay Area transit agencies because we all have to coordinate on things. And a lot of times it feels like a game of musical chairs. It'll be like, oh, that person that worked for Marin Transit. Oh, I see. They moved to Sonoma County Transit. Oh, that Sonoma County Transit planner moved over to County Connection in the East Bay. So there's a lot of musical chairs within the transit agency world. But that's because we all know one another. So when a position opens, kind of our first instinct is to see, okay, transit planners of other agencies, do any of you want this job? Because we know and trust you. So I wouldn't have this position right now without building that network. It's so important. And like I said, it doesn't always have to be that cliche face-to-face kind of thing, but just know that the Alumni Association Board of Directors, we're here for you, and we're trying to do a lot of events and present opportunities for us to create these connections. Because I'd love if I heard that there was a student trying to get a job in government, and they're a graduate, like I'm already me and the other two other people in the office here are probably gonna like, hey, give a little more consideration to so and so. They're an SSU alum, and we know SSU produces some good alums. So can't overstate how important those are.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, right? That Alumni Association and all you alums, we're here for you. Right? Use this as your network, and you never know, you might be meeting the next person you're working for or with one day by just coming to an event. So, well, Libby, that's all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. A lot of gold nuggets for those of you looking to get to the next part of your journey. For all of you that are listening today, you will be emailed a link with today's Industry Insight chat, as well as with that are the other Industry Insight chats that we've already done this year. So check those out. And once again, Libby, thank you. As I'm listening and writing notes, even though I know you, writing notes of how you evolved to who you are today, and were resilient in everything you were doing to get you to the spot you are now. So congratulations, keep being great. And to everybody out there, we'll catch you again on the next Industry Insight. So thanks for joining us.
If anyone has questions, really quick before we drop off, we have a little time if anyone want to drop a question. And if you don't, no pressure. But I'm completely open. If any of you are interested in government positions or have follow-up questions, you can I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. You can slide into my DMs, as they say. That's fine. Oh, Q&A. I see something came up. Sure, you're welcome. I'm very happy to be doing this. Maybe if I type something in the chat, can everyone see it if I put my email there? That's my email. Can you all see that? Yeah. If you have questions, you want to get in contact with me, I'm always happy to help fellow alums and current students. So thank you, Rich.
All right. Thanks, Libby. Bye, everybody.